Hello, everybody, and welcome back to an at-home edition of the Enterprise Dish. Everybody's at home, including Rick, and he's also in Ohio and hopefully doing well. How's it going, Rick?
Hey, Brad, it is going well. It is busy. It is crazy. I am at home. I've rearranged the office, I think, since we last spoke.
Yep.
Now you're seeing the other side of the less cluttered side of the office. But yeah, things are good. Things are busy. It's actually, in a way, more busy for me than it was, and yet, on the other hand, I have some time it's reclaimed, right? Because I'm not traveling. So getting used to it, being productive, but definitely keeping on. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think you paraphrased it pretty well there. You save the time from when you typically be driving or taking the kid to school or whatever. But then there's other times where it also feels like you're in meetings all day because you're not at the water cooler, you can't walk to somebody's cubicle, etc.
And indeed, and we've worked hard to try to keep the social element going on. But for me, it's been great. I've been able to get some more bicycling in.
Oh, nice.
So I think I'm at like 410 miles for the month already. So
Wow.
I've been doing some Biketron. Yeah.
Biketron, we'll take it. You take what you
Yeah.
can get, right? That
Indeed.
sounds good. So there's a couple things we got to talk through today. First of one is actually maybe potentially why you've been so busy. Veeam had a pretty big announcement this week that the Azure backup is now available. You want to just dive into how that works and what's going on there?
Yeah, sure. So it's the newest product from Veeam. Just yesterday, we're recording here on the 29th. So on the 28th, the newest product went available here at Veeam, Veeam Backup for Azure. Sorry, Veeam Backup for Microsoft Azure, because there's so many Azures out there. But anyways, the thought here is that this is cloud native agentless backup for Azure VMs. Really a big deal. We've been having this request for a long time. A lot of organizations obviously moving to the cloud, and backup is part of the process, right? Even though, in fact, even Microsoft does a really good job of the shared responsibility model. And for all four of their kind of packagings, on-prem software, software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, all four of those kind of packagings of Microsoft technologies, at the very top, they put customer data at the responsibility of the customer. So the thought is, with an Azure VM and really any other Azure service, the data responsibility sits with the customer. They provide the service, right? And you have to think about your data. So that's how we've built the product, and it's how we go to market with it. And we're going to add in other Azure services. Azure VMs is a great start, but it's not the end-all be-all. So look for us to do more with that over time. And we have an incredible interest for that. And for the listeners, there's a free edition, by the way. It's in the marketplace now. Up to 10 Azure VMs you can back up for free. Yeah, 10. It's pretty powerful, actually. And you did a little thought right there. And that's exactly one thing we're going to help people with, because we built in a native cost calculator, which is actually really important, because the thought is, if I back this up and if I'm keeping a day, 2 days, 3 years of data on Azure disk storage, or if I'm keeping it in Azure Blob Storage, the cost profile is going to be very different. So we'll estimate that for you, so that you know how much it would cost from a backup infrastructure standpoint to keep that workload protected. So we're looking forward to that.
The reason why I kind of paused and thought about it for a second. So 10 VMs, that's not small. Like, for some micro-sized businesses, that'll definitely get you up and running very, very easily. So if you've got a small operation hosted up in Azure, that Community Edition might just be the ticket for you.
Oh, that's just it. Community Edition. You said the other kind of technique, and we've had that on premises, right? So if you think about 10 physical servers or 10 VMs, we've been able to back that up for free with Community Edition, and then 10 Azure VMs, and the same over in AWS with EC2. We have 10 over there. So that magic number, or Office 365, 10 mailboxes for free, right? There's, it's not. This is one of those things that there's definitely a conscious loss of revenue, right? But it's one of those things that it's like, to capture the hearts and minds of the IT pros, it's just really part of our business model and our success. And it makes it incredibly easy to try in the marketplace, free, deploy. You'll be doing your first backup within minutes. It's awesome.
The better business model is always the one that's right for the customer, even if that cuts into your bottom line. You have a much longer business around if you keep that in mind. And so that's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we've had to really kind of go back and forth with the sales teams on what is that magic number of free. We had a free edition in the on-premises world that actually wasn't limited by virtual machines, but was limited by functionality, and they didn't like that. Okay. Whereas if we had a limited by the number of VMs or the number of instances, that's almost a better way to package a free edition. And again, you can do a lot with 10 virtual machines on premises, or 10 Office 365 mailboxes, or 10 Azure or AWS VMs. So the thought here is, and you can even use that for network attached storage backup. So 10 instances equals 2.5 terabytes. So you can do 2.5 terabytes of NAS backup for free as well. So pretty versatile, powerful situation going on over in the green spaces.
Good stuff. Speaking of sort of capacity and all that other stuff going on, I'm curious if you have heard from any of your customers about actually having issues with Azure, not necessarily being online, but it's been floating around. And Microsoft actually even came out with a statement saying, hey, look, we're prioritizing like kind of first responders, hospital, the medical industry with capacity on Azure. Have you heard from any of your friends, clients, colleagues, anything like that about capacity issues up on Azure?
I have had this happen in both clouds. I would not say it's only an Azure behavior. When I talk to organizations who are using the cloud significantly, it's only the big ones where I find this happening. The big customers, like spinning up one VM is usually not an issue. But I was talking to a large professional services organization that, thinks in the quantity of 1,000 instances and at a time.
Ooh.
That's different, right? So their angle was they can't always secure it in a region, so they're having to think about moving to other regions, and they don't want to get into the reserved instances, right? Because there's just a lot more cost with that. So yes, that is real, and I think that that's just the nature of the cloud, right? In fact, I'll give you an example, Brad. I talk to a lot of people about storing backup data in the cloud. So this is moving from, like, say, compute services, which is usually the most contended in this example, initializing Azure VMs, for example, or AWS EC2 instances. But when it comes to storage resources like Azure Blob or even over at S3 Storage, I've used this language that it's basically infinite, right? Because the thought of these cloud services, as a consumer, you don't really think about limits. But I was talking to a customer once who was a math major and like kind of side hustle as a mathematician, right? He's like, it's not infinite. And he was so like defensive of me using the mathematical term infinite, referring to the cloud. But when you see these limits, it actually comes back around, and actually he's right. It's not infinite, right? There is not an infinite amount of data storage available on the planet. There is not an infinite available amount of compute capacity and things like that. So I think once you get to a certain consumption level, right, Microsoft, Amazon will start talking to you directly about the cloud spend. I know that there's job titles for like TAMs, right? They'll start talking to you about your leveled consumption. But this notion of prioritizing different industry types, so healthcare, et cetera, that's not a surprise. But even before the pandemic, I have heard of this in the cloud, especially with the organizations that live in the world of 1,000 for instantly deploying. And they just got used to having to go to other regions for it because that's where it would fit.
Yeah.
There's another angle to that, though, as well. And the reality is that the different industries using the cloud use it for different reasons, right? And one of the biggest perpetrators out there have been some of the threat actors. Sure. So just on one angle, you see the cloud resources being kind of, I don't want to call it metered, but prioritized is the right word. But I've also seen a couple of news outlets actually a slight decline in ransomware.
Really?
Right? Yeah. So there's a very interesting angle on that. And part of it is that maybe IT administrators aren't needlessly logging into critical systems where they might make the error that introduces a threat, you know, or something like that. So a small shimmy of good news that as much as we like to jump on the ransomware angle to be resilient. So one of two things, you know, the current conditions have taken people away from the risk point, or they're listening to all of my good advice about offline backups and immutable. Of course, definitely, combination of the two. But you know, I actually think a lot of that acting happens in the cloud and so through some of, you know, service offerings that are available publicly. Like there's just one secure email service that they all seem to use that, you know, is kind of interesting, right? That you always see the same kind of common thread with one. And we've even seen, I saw one ransomware service actually shut down this week and release all their decryption keys. So there's some weird things going on right now. I don't know. It's just hard to kind of take it all in.
Interesting times on all fronts there. Very, very interesting. You brought up a point about backing up certain things, and we actually got a reader question in this week, and it was very directly targeted at you. It says, does Rick have any ideas about how to back up laptops that are outside the office for obvious reasons right now, running into challenges where these devices are shut down, bandwidth issues, and is putting that data on that device in OneDrive enough? Or what does Rick recommend?
Oh, yeah. So that's actually something that I think is a very topic du jour thing right now. And here's the short answer is OneDrive is not necessarily enough. And the same goes for OneDrive for Business. It's not necessarily enough. I was on a call yesterday, and you know, any organization that quickly does anything, like a rapid transition to work from home, is walking into a situation of having to do something wrong or making a mistake or not putting security at the front of it all. Kind of think of I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, do you want it right or do you want it right now? That type of thing. So do we want to make a work from home strategy right, or do we need to do it right now? I think we had a lot of the latter go on in March. So my advice here is to just accept that data will be created in new ways, and more specifically on new devices, and more concerning, stored in new places. So my advice is and you can do this for free with the Veeam agent for Windows and the Veeam agent for Linux, is you can have, I can't reach it because I don't know exactly where it is, but I have over on the other system, I have an external hard drive, and I'm using the Veeam agent from Windows to back up to that laptop, which is turned off every night, and it ejects the media, so it's offline for ransomware reasons, right? So that's kind of a neat trick. The other thing is you can have a backup for free, go to a NAS device, and then with a license, Veeam agent backups can go to OneDrive or OneDrive for Business, which is an image-based backup going into OneDrive, and that's a different story. That's actually really cool. So then the backup could potentially go to OneDrive for Business locations and kind of be more of a central repository from a business standpoint. And then the other option is these backups can be managed by a service provider. So the thought is, if I have my laptop here, I could have my backups go to a central storage resource managed by my IT service, right? So the options are there with Veeam, as simple as a USB device or a network share at the worker's house, and those are free, all the way up to sending it back into the some shared resources. And I think that it's really important to do that, because I'm actually surprised we haven't seen some sort of breach or leak of, like, for example, I'm just making something up here, executive data laptop was breached by using neighbor's Wi-Fi or something like that, you know, or suspicious van parked on street all day intercepts, executive email. I'm surprised we haven't seen those. So we're just in situations where we have a lot of things we can't control. And so the one area I've been advising people is to at least back up the endpoints. And if you have services that can be consumed remotely, you can't really stand up VDI and push it out after the fact well, right? Some organizations can. So, if they had that in place now, it's a lot easier to double up the capacity rather than re-implement it now. So I've seen a lot of that, Citrix sessions, cloud-hosted desktop sessions. And then the other thing you have to keep in mind is the communications. So yes, backing up the endpoints, the data is going to be protected, but we've all seen the conference call bomb, right? People just picking arbitrary conference numbers and jumping in, or other conference services that are based on the name, like personal room type conference centers, right? Those aren't necessarily secured either. So give some thought to that so we don't have any creep attendees on these types of things as they've increased, right? So a few things to do, but mainly just watch where the data is being created and, work to have it protected. And then secondly, maybe put some additional IT-based awareness out to end users about what their responsibilities are. Because if I take this laptop home from the office, if I'm just what I would call a task worker and not an IT staff, I just want to use my device, get my work, and be done with it. But what other concerns do I have, right? Have I put in things like screensaver locks after inactivity, right? I don't want my kids coming up and doing this type of stuff, or that's just one example. So maybe IT staff should kind of think end to end, from device security, data security, and then end user processes, because we're also potentially in networks that aren't filtered at home. So the threat of introducing ransomware, like this is a work computer I'm talking to you on, but I'm on my home network. Now, not like everybody, I do have a content filter. I have the Untangle and I have a really good filter, but who's to say that I would be at a network where maybe I have another computer on the network that's infected with something and it's constantly hitting at this device. Those are risks that are out there. So just kind of as an IT staff, give some thought to those different things and just proactively educate and reach out to the company staff to make sure that they know that these are the steps. This is the responsibility now of the staff.
Sage advice as always.
I just made it all up. I'm just thinking through scenarios.
We're just going to delete all that. Don't listen to that, folks. There was no years of practitioner behind those statements.
Not at all.
None. Good stuff. So what else is going on, Rick? You're working at home. Everything else, hopefully still saying positive as best as you can, at least at the time.
The big other thing is we had to refactor VeeamON a bit to be a virtual event, and that's actually coming along real good. I just saw the first cut of 20 sessions come in, and I was very impressed with the content. And those are going to be on like a broadcast during the event. And I'll tell the listeners here, we got a little secret trick, and we're going to actually have this broadcast of a keynote, some live sessions, a Veeamathon, which is like a hackathon, and then the breakout content. And then throughout the rest of the summer, we're going to actually introduce new content, right? So we want people to kind of keep coming back. So got some tricks up our sleeve, but just head on over to veeamon.com. You can find out more about that.
Good to know. We will keep, obviously people will hopefully be tuning back in, multiple
of course they will,
enterprise dishes between now and then, so we'll be able to keep everybody updated. But Rick, during this, we'll call it fun home time, we very much appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, rearranging your office, dropping the tidbits to everybody else. Make sure you hit the subscribe buttons down below, and we'll catch all of you right back here next time.